Welcome to the April 2nd edition of the PFF Forecast. It is a day where my voice has decided not to bless me, but I'm going to power through because that's just what I do. I got Arjun and Brad. We're going to talk some draft props. Well, Jalen Carter over under, some player to be selected, number 3, who we think right now, based on what we're hearing, is likely to trade up. That, of course, involving Anthony Richardson. We'll dive into some Masters bets as well. Talk a little bit about the national championship game, which is tomorrow. It's going to be a great pod. Nice little quick one. Let's rock. All right, fellas. I will do my best to shut up as much as I possibly can. Yeah, I feel great. I do not sound great. Arjun, you're rocking the Lakers sweater. It's nice to have you back on the bandwagon, buddy.
Yeah, officially back, rooting for the team again. Getting AD and LeBron on the playing together. Team looks good. Russell looks good. I think they're putting it together well, and hopefully they don't just make the play in and kind of blow it right after. But I kind of have a little bit of faith as long as everyone can stay healthy. And their defense has been like really, really good the past couple of weeks. And I used to be, I think early in the season, just fading their defense, like betting like opponent point guard assists overs or assists or points over for like their guards because they had no defense. But now they've really turned it around and gotta give credit where credit's due. And I think Lakers are playing really well right now.
They are 33-1 on FanDuel to win the NBA championship. Bucks plus 240, Celtics plus 340, my Suns plus 650. Lakers are a bargain. It's actually really funny. The Lakers have longer odds than the Cleveland Cavaliers do right now to win the NBA championship, which says it all. Tiger Woods on the Augusta practice range today did not wear red. He was wearing black. Brad, you did wear red. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, I was a disgrace to the shirt I'm wearing on the course today, but I put it on, tried to build some confidence, some momentum going in. Look, we won the bets. Me and my partner, he carried me. We won the bets today. But anyway, feeling good. Going to the Masters. We're diving into data golf. There will be more on Wednesday because we still have not got head-to-head matchups and a whole bunch of other ways to bet the Masters. And like I've said in this pod before, yes, I mean, betting winners and betting some top 10s and top 5s, there's value there. But I really think diving into the data and finding mismatches there is how we're going to have some winners for next weekend. So everybody get ready for Wednesday's episode for the Masters special. But we'll have a couple thoughts tonight, before we get to that.
I've secured a data golf login. So your boy will be in there as well. We're going to get Arjun to be a golf fan one of these days. I think Arjun has there's a better chance of Arjun doing that than Seth Galina. Who is like staunchly against. Okay, let's dive into some draft props. We are still I've been talking to a few different people about this, and Brad, we talked about it last week. We still are not seeing any of the pick over unders that we are used to seeing, and the kind of thought here is the books are waiting. They don't want to release them now because the only people that are going to bet them are people that know something, and they're going to wait till the week before and then release them, which is kind of sad. But we do have some. Arjun, you want to talk a little bit about Jalen Carter, and I think he's interesting because Mike Renner has him as top 2 player in the draft. We saw Ben Solak talk about how he is the best player in the draft. Brad, you said that as well. So Arjun, what's kind of the thought here around Jalen Carter and where his current pick over under is at?
Yeah, so his pick over under 7.5, kind of evenly priced on both sides on DraftKings. It's minus 120 to the over, minus 110 to the under 7.5. And to me, I see 4 quarterbacks going in the top 4. I tweeted this out the other day, but as of right now, Anthony Richardson is the odds-on favorite to be the number 3 overall pick, indicating that some team is most likely going to trade up with Arizona for number 3. And we talked about it off air, but it could be anywhere from Indianapolis, Seattle, Detroit, Vegas, or, like Tennessee going up to 3. So, Arizona, if they move out after 7, which could be like maybe the Falcons or the Titans, they're not going to be in play to take a defensive player. So right here, you're looking at 3 teams selecting that could take Jalen Carter. It's going to be Seattle, Detroit, or Raiders, or you replace one of those teams with Arizona. Now, all 3 of those teams could use Jalen Carter. Like Seattle's run defense was god awful last year. They didn't really do much to address the interior defensive line outside of Draymond Jones. They lost Al Woods to retirement. Puna Ford, I believe they let go. I think Brad, did they re-sign Jaron Reed, or did Jaron Reed?
They brought in Jaron Reed. They actually cut
Okay.
Al Woods. He is like 37 years old though. But
Yeah.
talking to Puna Ford, apparently nothing done there. And they brought in Jaron Reed, but he's more of like a pass rusher, not really a run stuffer.
Yeah. And so in that light, I also think if Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are on the board, I do think Seattle goes edge over interior defensive line, especially because they invested in the interior defensive line market or interior defensive line group with Draymond Jones in free agency. Now, the Lions, like just based on how Brad Holmes talks a lot about character, Dan Campbell is a big character culture guy. I just don't see them bringing in someone like Carter with all the off-field issues he's had. You go back to the Rams and never really, at least to my memory, seemed like they ever got involved with players that had kind of like off-field issues. And while Carter, he was a great player production-wise, he didn't really test that well. And he kind of looked bad at his pro day. So I don't necessarily think the Raiders would take him, or the Lions. And then we just got a report this week, which, factual or not, I don't really know, but it sounded like the Raiders just took Carter completely off their board. Now, given that owner Mark Davis has been there for picks like Damon Arnett and Henry Ruggs, I'm not surprised if he put his foot down and said, like, look, we don't want anyone with any legal issues. We want clean players. Like, we don't want anyone who's had any trouble in college. This could be an ownership thing, which when you're picking this high in the draft, like ownership, I think would probably want to be involved. So I don't necessarily see the Raiders taking him either. And so right now, with his over under at 7.5, I just I can't make a case for the under. I would definitely lean towards the over, which is why I think it's shaded to the over. But you have to have like a real strong inclination that either the Lions, the Cardinals, or the Seahawks are willing to overcome some of those off-field issues and, take him with the 5th or 6th, or even with the Raiders, the 7th pick.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like from a fit standpoint, it makes sense. But I do think so. The report came from the Athletic. There was pushback on it from, I think, like the team themselves. But it wasn't some wholehearted like, no, he's definitely. They're bringing him in for top 30 visit. They'll see where it goes. But to your point, I mean, Arnett is one of a half dozen players that are first rounders no longer on the roster because of non-football reasons. You'd imagine they want to just go a different direction, or it would certainly make a lot of sense.
The quote that we heard from Dan Campbell was on Jalen Carter. We talked to a teammate of his the other day, and man, he told us some things we didn't know that nobody probably would have known. It was like, oh, that's interesting. The reporter then asked if it was good or bad, and he just replied, it's interesting. I mean, what the spin on this would be that they talked to some teammates. Teammates were like, hey, he's actually a great guy. I don't know how, like, is that the way?
There is some of that. There actually is some of that. To his credit, there's apparently a player who he paid for his food and I think lodging at some point with his NIL money. There are positive stories about him as a teammate and a friend, and not to totally throw him under the bus. So maybe that's what it was about. But I feel like if Dan Campbell was referring to that, why would he not yeah, it was good stuff. Like, he seems like a misunderstood kid that has made some bad decisions, but is a good, why would he be afraid to say that?
It's strange because to your point, it's like the state that the sentence that said that nobody probably would have known was the one that kind of threw me off. It's like, if he's doing nice things for people, like, I think people would know that, right? Like, so it makes me think that it's something about the actual situation. I don't know. To me, again, Arjun, I agree here because it just doesn't have a good vibe. You look at the teams that you would normally think would take a chance on some character issues. The Raiders are certainly up there, but now I think reverting from that because of previous history. Is there, I mean, the one that I kind of keep coming back to, so the Seahawks have a really interesting way of drafting, right? They take players who like they are looking at their kind of mental makeup, right, in a very unique way, and are generally taking guys that they feel are going to really improve, going to work really hard. I look at Jalen Carter and what happened in his pro day, and that does not strike me as the player that they would be kind of lining up to take. So it is interesting. Team to draft Jalen Carter right now on FanDuel. Lions are 3-1. The Seahawks are 4-1. The Eagles are 6-1. The Bears are 7-1. The Falcons are 10-1, and the Raiders are 14-1, as well as the Texans and the Cardinals. Are there any of these? Like, would you take a flyer on any of these, like a specific team to draft Jalen Carter?
Yeah, I don't love the odds, but I think if any team would do it, it'd be the Eagles. They need to replace Javon Hargrave. They need a long-term solution for Fletcher Cox in that interior. I think they are one of the few teams who could probably not waste a pick, but like they could use a pick on Jalen Carter, and if he doesn't pan out, like they'll still be fine in the long run. And like with the player of his upside, like he's obviously a game changer. They've had Fletcher Cox in that defense for years, so they know how good interior defensive lineman play can contribute to being a good defense. So I would consider the Eagles at 6-1, and if he's sitting there at 10, maybe the Eagles aren't as favorable to trading back like how he normally does. And similar to last year where they traded up to get Jordan Davis, they could maybe move up with, say, the Bears or the Falcons if they think Carter's sliding and be like, hey, like we want to secure this guy because we think he's a top tier player. And even if he doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. We still have a great team because we have a good quarterback, great receivers. And I think the Eagles would be a team that can take a chance on him because of the roster they have around him.
And you touched on a key point for me. So I totally agree. I've always kind of half joked like 10 is a floor for him because I just don't see Howie Roseman passing up on him. You mentioned Jordan Davis. When you are going to trade up in the first round for a player, you don't like him just as a football player. You also love him as a person. And that seems to be the case. If Jordan Davis, who is Jalen Carter's teammate for 2 or 3 years, if he puts in a good word for Jalen Carter and says, we can trust this guy, I was in the room with him, he's a good person, good football player, I'm sure that goes a long way in Philadelphia. So he might even be the linchpin to this whole thing. I would agree. 6-1, it's worth the flyer at least from all those options, in my opinion.
That's actually a really good point on Jordan Davis, because I think people would actually look at that the other way. So my initial take, Brad, was, they took Jordan Davis last year, right? Like, why would they take another interior guy? But your point is great. And then the second one is they let, Javon Hargrave leave. Great interior guy. So if they don't get Aaron Donald, this might be a decent consolation prize. I'm curious about the Bears at 7-1. So they're sitting there at 9, right ahead of the Eagles. Are they a team that you think would take a chance? I mean, their defense was such a nightmare.
So and that position is still the worst position on their roster. Was rated dead last for us in interior defenders, and they have not added there. They added some edge and some obviously linebackers. So they kept their top 30 visit for him. The big thing, and I know every team says this, but I can tell you as someone who follows the Bears probably closer than anyone should, like when they say they care about character and care about locker room guys, they are not lying in any way, shape, or form. They just don't deal with it. I know the regime's barely been there, but they just want high character people first. Again, I'm not trying to disparage his name, but it does scare me off a little bit just because of that. From a football standpoint, it is the easiest yes in the history of time. Like they could not use a player more than Jalen Carter. But to me, the signal for them was you trade to 9, you're not concerned about him not being there when you are picking. I think that's enough of a signal. I almost at that point, I think Arjun mentioned it a little bit. If you are assuming Arizona is going to go back, and let's say, 5 is the high, or 4, I guess, is the highest. But let's say, they go to 7 with the Raiders or 11 with the Titans. I almost kind of like that because I would imagine there's some value cooked into, he's not going to go at 3, so Arizona's a bad bet. Let's we're actually betting on a second order event of first the trade back, and then I'm pulling out my eager for the pod, and then the Jalen Carter pick.
We need a fat tail reference.
Did I use that correctly? I don't even know. It felt good off the tongue, though.
So going into the Wayback Machine, Eric sent me something on Twitter. It's absolutely hilarious that Reese Witherspoon and her former husband divorced because, and what led to their divorce was the terribleness of Quibi. And so Protestant, we used to have, for those you that are new members of the printing press, by the way, go join the Discord and make sure that you get your fill of everything draft props and betting related stuff. But you'll also get some tidbits about Quibi, which was, if you don't know what Quibi is, just go Wikipedia it and you'll enjoy yourself. But we used to do a segment where I would come up with fictional Quibi shows, and Eric would try to guess whether it was a real Quibi show or not. I'll just say this, like, I have a future in designing terrible TV because I was a lead at it. Yeah, so we'll bring that segment back at some point here, resurrect it a little bit. I thought this was interesting, guys. So first defensive player drafted, Will Anderson right now is minus 600. Guy is like locked in to be first defensive player drafted. Carter and Tyree Wilson are both 10-1, as is Christian Gonzalez at the moment. It's interesting because, like the Carter versus Wilson situation is there. It's hard for me to imagine a team passing up on Jalen Carter, but I don't know. I mean, Jeremiah's loved Wilson. What do you think about that, Brad?
I honestly think that, and again, it's kind of like we talked about the quarterbacks back before the trade and all that. I think any non-Will Anderson bet is a good bet. I can tell you this for a fact. There are some teams that love him, that have him with a really, really high grade. One team in particular, it's like a special grade. He's kind of like, it's not a first, it's, and there are other teams that genuinely, they don't see how he fits. They're kind of confused. Like, he played some 4-eye at Alabama, and the thinking is basically he's not quite big enough to be on the inside, and he's not quite bursty and bendy and fast enough to play as a pure edge. There are some teams that kind of have that concern. And as we always talk about, like, look, if you're not good enough to figure it out with Will Anderson, leads the college football in pressures for us the last 2 years and the last 3 years over both samples. Like, I get that argument, but for me, we probably missed the boat on Christian Gonzalez. If you're in the Discord, you did not miss the boat. Yeah, Arjun's like, you didn't miss yeah. So if you wanted to bet that, I think that ship has sailed. And if you got it, kudos, and we'll ride that one out together. At this point, I think Tyree Wilson, if you want to bet that market and just fade a minus 600 on Will Anderson, I think that's the bet for me.
Yeah, with Wilson, you're betting on the traits, you're betting on the long arms, you're betting on his frame, which is very impressive. Like, if you just put those two next to each other, like, Wilson has the more impressive build. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the Trevon Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson argument all over again. And like, Hutchinson had the more impactful rookie year, even though I think some of his stuff was kind of like cleanup pressures and cleanup sacks, but overall his production was better his rookie year. And I think teams should be able to recognize that. And Anderson playing at a top tier college, going against top of the line competition, is still dominating, like Brad said, with ranking #1 in pressures over a 2 and 3 year time span. I mean, it doesn't really get better than that. And even if he doesn't fit, I mean, he's skilled enough to be able to play anywhere, whether it's like 3-4 outside linebacker or 4-3 DN. So yeah, if you want to fade it, I think Wilson would be the best bet just because of the traits. And we've seen teams fall in love with that single-handedly. But yeah, if you were in the Discord, you got Christian Gonzalez at 28-1, and it's been bet down a little bit. So you're doing a great job.
Any other so the only other market that I think is somewhat interesting, number 3 overall pick right now, Anthony Richardson's minus 110, Will Anderson's plus 250, Will Levis is 6-1, Christian Gonzalez is 10-1, Tyree Wilson is 20-1, and Bryce Young is 25-1. I was trying to figure out if there's a scenario, how would Bryce Young go 3rd overall? Is there a pathway that happens? I just can't imagine how that could happen.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. No, there isn't. Yeah, there isn't.
I mean, I guess what it would be was Stroud and then Anthony Richardson, or Anthony Richardson. No, yeah, I think it would be Stroud and Anthony Richardson is the only way. And I don't know. I don't see that happening.
I can't. But I do think, I will say this. I am more and more talking myself into the Seahawks taking Anthony Richardson. Either trading up to get him, or somehow I don't think they'd be able to snatch him at 5, but that could happen. Like, if the Cardinals can't find someone and then they take a defensive player, and then say the Colts like Will Levis, which right now that is they're the favorite to draft Will Levis, then you could see the Seahawks snatching him at 5th overall. Be good for them. Any other draft props of note, guys, before we shift gears?
No, I gotta say, I think the books are doing a good job of making these lines really sharp. I'm like, the Zay Flowers and Broderick Jones lines, 13.5 for Broderick Jones and 24.5 for Zay Flowers. That's like almost exactly where I would put it. So all of them except for Carter have like major juice on one side. So it's kind of just best to wait it out. But I think we're just waiting for more props to come out.
And where are you seeing those lines, Arjun?
DraftKings.
People know where they can find them. DraftKings has them. FanDuel has not put them up yet. Yeah, I don't know what they're waiting for. All right, let's talk some Masters here. Brad, you've been deep in the data. We shouted out Data Golf last time. You've continued to leverage the power over there. We're going to do a lot more on Wednesday as well because the head-to-heads haven't even come out yet. But there's some interesting stuff to talk about now, and people are going to come in and bet a lot of these winners and top 5 and top 10 bets this week. So if you want to snatch some, now is going to be a good time to do so before lines start moving quite a bit. So Brad, I'll let you kick off. I have a couple that I like as well.
Yep. So the only market really right now is DraftKings also released top 10s and top 5s. Everywhere else that I've looked, it's just straight up, to win. So yeah, you mentioned, I've been diving into Data Golf. We talked a little bit about how the most important strokes gained metric for the Masters for Augusta is the approach shot. You can actually look at like a spider web, like the spider draft webs you can look at and do the same thing for each course on the website. We'll keep shouting it out because it is awesome. So I looked at that for Augusta, and the two most important metrics, approach is number 1, around the green, which I'll be honest, I need to look in at exactly how they define that. But I imagine, out of the bunker, close chip shots, probably, 50 yards and in, whatever the case may be. Those two are off by a good margin, kind of in the spider chart of what correlates best to doing well in those areas and then doing well in the Masters. So with that knowledge, I took the data for both of those. I weighted it a little bit towards the approach because it still was a more heavily factor. Very simple though, just weighted. Approach the strokes gained from approach so far this season, so 3 months in, and then strokes gained from the around the green metric. Just threw those together. Very simple. So we mentioned Cameron Young already. He's in the top 10 here. He's at 10th, so he already kind of aligns with what we were talking about earlier. Obviously, his approach number was top 5, and then his around the green is still very good. We bet on that one thesis. So combining the two here, there are a couple bets that I like that jump out. So the first one is our buddy Tony Finau is 4th in this composite ranking of approach shot and around the green. And he is plus 220 to finish in the top 10. Again, not trying to get into like narratives and past performances, but all the guy does is show up to Augusta and like be in the mix on Sunday. Obviously was in the final pairing with Tiger when he won in 2019, but even outside of that, has had some good showings there. It is a course that lines up well with him. So I threw in on him on plus 220 to be in the top 10. You could also bet, plus 450 to finish in the top 5 if you like that. And then one other longer odds bet that I placed was a guy named Chris Kirk, our buddy Christian Kirk, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. So he came in 11th in this metric. He also just played very well on the Live Tour. If you are looking for guys that are playing well coming into this week, I think he was top 5 this past week. Brooks Koepka got the win on Sunday. If you're into Koepka, doesn't show up great in this particular stat that we're looking at, but nevertheless, way longer odds on Chris Kirk. You get him at plus 850 to finish in the top 10, 22 to 1 to finish in the top 5. I just kind of threw a flyer on it. And I did. I think we've lost some value here now. So I bet 250 to 1 on him to win the tournament at at BetMGM. I'm now seeing plus 130 to 1 on DraftKings. So I think it was less on DraftKings when I looked at all three, but nevertheless, maybe being bet down a little bit as a guy who's playing good golf and just shows up in the key areas.
So the one that I was looking at today, Brooks won on the Live Tour this weekend, whatever the hell that's worth. But what I do think is interesting, so he's 35 to 1 to win, plus 750 to top 5, and plus 330 to top 10. What's interesting about Koepka, he's played well at Augusta before. If you remember the Tiger Woods victory, Koepka was ended up finishing in second, had a shot actually to win that tournament, and hit it in the water on, was it 12? but made a furious comeback. A guy that we've forgotten, but plays ridiculously well in majors. Like that's his thing. And so I like that one. I think 35 is pretty solid. So I'll probably sprinkle a little bit on that. And then maybe top 5 as well for Koepka. Do you know if that's moved a lot because of his win, Brad? I wasn't aware of what it was before this.
I haven't been monitoring it, but I imagine it has. I mean, people are going to bet on stuff like that coming into the weekend. Let's see here. I will look. I'll check back Daily Golf. Maybe we can throw this in the chat. If they monitor throughout the week how the odds fluctuate, maybe I can find it there. Because if I'm being honest, I did not keep tabs on it throughout the week.
The favorites: Scotty Scheffler 7-1, Rory McIlroy also 7-1, John Rahm is 9-1, Jordan Spieth is 16-1, Patrick Cantlay is 18-1, Xander Schauffele is 22-1, Tony Finau, Justin Thomas, Jason Day, Colin Morikawa, Cameron Smith also 22-1. You look at that list, and I'll tell you the takeaway that I have is it seems pretty wide open. Like Scheffler dominated last year, obviously playing very, very good golf. But when Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay are your, 6th and 7th best odds to win the tournament, it's pretty wide open. So just
to show the kind of efficacy of what we're looking at. And obviously, I mean, strokes gained is going to correlate to odds, but every single player you just mentioned, okay, Xander Schauffele is 3rd in my metric. Finau's 4th. Homa is 6th. Rahm is 7th. McIlroy is 9th. Cantlay is 15th. So I think maybe one other name you mentioned, Cam Smith, who I know is a hot bet this week. A lot of people like him. He's not top 20, but every single guy you just talked about is top 15 in this blended strokes gained from approach shots and around the green.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Arjun, what do you think? You in?
I'll be in. I'll be tailing some of the bets. Obviously I'm not the biggest golf guy, so I don't have a lot of insight to offer here.
We'll get you at some point.
We'll get him.
All right. Let's close out with a little national championship discussion. I am down horrendous because of the stupid Miami Hurricanes not being able to cover yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, the U was down bad. Thankfully, I bet them. I also bet them at halftime plus 14.5, and they did manage to cover the live spread, thankfully. But so it is going to be San Diego State and UConn. This opened, I think, at 6.5. It is now out to 7.5. People immediately bet the living hell out of UConn, not surprisingly. Do you guys still think UConn is a value at 7.5? It is minus 7.5, minus 104 on FanDuel, plus 7.5 for SDSU. The alma mater of the great Austin Gale is minus 118.
I'll jump in. The easy reaction would be to kind of freak out about UConn. They won every single game by double digits. I kind of want to. I thought the spread was going to be like 9.5, 10, which was obviously, it would be kind of ridiculous for a final, but I really thought it was going to land there or open there, I should say. Look, San Diego State, they did it against Alabama and, of course, this past game against FAU, making late game comebacks. Their defense is phenomenal. And they find a way because they don't really have a great scorer. They had the one guy, number 20, who was banging threes down in the first half, but kind of cooled off the rest of the game. UConn is, I think, a significantly better basketball team. I don't know if 7.5 is too many, but I see them winning by 15 points in this game. I really do.
Yeah, I would. I resonate with Brad on the spread. I would take also Adama Sanogo's over points. That guy's is a beast, just absolute hustler. Was banging threes in the first half and then cooled off when they didn't really need it anymore. I think he's someone that would be a little bit tough for SDSU to guard. And overall, UConn just such an explosive offense, and SDSU is really not. I think before this game, SDSU had 8 or 9 straight games go under their pregame win or pregame total. So they're more of a defense heavy team, but I just, elite offenses usually beat elite defenses in every sport. And I think that will kind of translate here. And Sanogo is definitely someone I would be betting on to take advantage of that.
Yeah, CSU, not the tallest team in the world either. The total is at 132.5. I got to say that I would lean your direction, Brad, as well, with that taking UConn -7.5, even though you're not getting the best of that number. It definitely has the feeling of a blowout. What I thought was interesting is the in the women's national championship game today, Iowa was favored and got the doors blown off of them. LSU played the way that UConn played against Miami, where they just literally could not miss. And UConn just has so many scores. I mean, they have like 15 guys that can make threes, and they have a lot of tall players as well. So I tend to resonate with you. All right, that is the quick Sunday evening edition of PFF Forecast. Go check out all of the great content that Brad and Arjun and the rest of the team put out on PFF.com. You can also get yourself a PFF draft guide, the new version of that drop. Actually, there's a new version dropping in just a couple of days here, so you'll want to go check that out. You can also get a PFF Plus subscription for 30% off right now with the promo code MDS30, and that also unlocks the mock draft simulator for you. So go check all that good stuff out. Hop into the Discord where Brad will be feeding the people with Masters data, and Arjun will let us know any draft props that we can take advantage of before the podcast airs. Thanks for hanging out, putting up with my voice, and we'll go drink some warm tea. Love y'all. Peace.